Just as I did in lesson 26, I am going to give my observations, my conclusions at the beginning. So if you don't make it through it, you'll still get to hear what I'm thinking. Here we go. There are many players involved in the delivery of education in the United States. Without question, the teacher unions are the most prominent. They have many members, several kinds of power, the most obvious of which is political, money, and plenty of publicity. How have they used these resources? They certainly have not used them to enhance U.S. education. They have engaged in endless trench warfare that leads to a stalemate as each side tries to show who's boss around here and leads to more and more pages of work rules. They refuse to call out ineffective teacher. They stifle innovation. Meanwhile, we produce many high school graduates who cannot read, do math, or solve digital problems. We slip down in global rankings and do not provide either good future workers or good citizens. They have no internal driving force for educational excellence. How can they stand to let this happen? How can they not support efforts to put their teachers in classrooms where they can teach rather than discipline children all day long? After all, if the U.S. public felt they were getting their money's worth for education, they might be willing to pay more. Here's my last say. My conclusion. The teacher unions are the most responsible for the sorry state of U.S. education. They must be repurposed or repurpose themselves into a positive rather than a negative force. They must stand for educational excellence or be legislated out of existence. Lesson 27, Teacher Unions. My goodness, where would teachers be without their unions? Unions exist to protect their members, to assure that they get a good deal. Go back to lesson 25, Teachers, the state of the profession. My conclusion is that the state of our teachers is dire. Apparently the unions aren't doing their job. Can the teacher profession be any worse off? With all their union power, how have things gotten so out of hand? Here's my opinion. Should teachers be represented by a union? To that I have an unequivocal yes. It takes power to wedge money from taxpayers. The public knows that every dollar paid to a teacher must come from them. It's exactly the same in the private sector, but the link between a production worker's hourly pay and the price of a car is much less clear. We now watch a short video featuring Michelle Rhee. Michelle made quite a splash in the world of education. She was active in the world of education, and in 2007, she was named the Chancellor of the Washington, D.C. schools. She served in that role until 2010. In late 2010, she founded Students First, a nonprofit that works on educational reform.
I run into a lot of people as I'm talking nationally about these issues who want to say to me, well, it's the teachers union, they are the problem. If we didn't have unions, then things would be so much better. And there's sort of a real heavy emphasis on how do we change unions. And in my mind, that is absolutely the wrong emphasis. The purpose of a teachers union is to protect the rights, privileges, and pay of their members. They are doing a wonderful job of that. And so you can't begrudge them the fact that they're doing exactly what they are chartered to do. We can't expect that all of a sudden they're going to say, yes, we want to adopt a teacher evaluation system that will identify people who will be low performers, who will then be like, oh, then they're not doing their job. They're not protecting the jobs of their members at that point. So in my mind, the issue is not that teachers unions exist. The problem to date has been that you've had these incredibly powerful teachers unions that have lots of resources, and they use those resources to have influence on the political process, which they've done a magnificent job of. And we don't have, or we haven't until we started Students First, we haven't had an organized national interest group that was advocating on behalf of children who had this equivalent resources and people to mobilize. So when you don't have that, then you end up with a really skewed landscape and environment towards those special interests. And what we really need to do is even that out.
Michelle and I agree that teachers need a union. She lauds today's unions and all the good they have done for teachers. She said their advocacy is very effective for the teachers. I couldn't disagree more. They have focused so totally on their members that they are destroying the system within which they work. She argues for a countervailing force that advocates for the students. I'm sure that is what she's trying to do with her nonprofit. Now and in the past, there has been no such force, and it is not likely there will be one anytime soon. Of course, that's what I'm attempting to do with these lessons, to get the public to rise up and demand significant change. I advocate for a union that has a much broader perspective. We learn in industry that good systems produce good outcomes. If the union, in my thinking, advocated for excellence in U.S. education, power would naturally lead to higher quality, better paid teachers. We learned that in lesson 26. Here is an overview of teachers and teacher unions. The number of U.S. public school teachers. In 2017-2018, there were 3.5 million full and part-time public school teachers, including 1.8 million elementary school teachers and 1.7 million secondary school teachers. There are two major unions. The first is the NEA. The National Education Association was founded in Philadelphia in 1857. They claim a membership of 3.1 million active teachers and others. The other big union is the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, founded in Chicago in 1916, has a membership of 1.7 million active teachers and others. The AFT was a breakaway from the NEA and was created to focus only on teachers and no administrators. Each of these unions have state affiliates and local chapters, creating a very large and powerful network. Terry Moe is a professor of political science at Stanford and a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, agrees that unions create more problems than they solve. Moe told the Daily Beast, "We are not saying unions are responsible for every problem of public schools, but they are major obstacles to reform." Moe adds that it takes an average $200,000 and 15% of a principal's time in 2 years to get a bad teacher out of schools. Here is a 5-minute video of Professor Terry Moore that effectively explains the roles of union in our education system.
Shortly after taking office, President Barack Obama's Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, acknowledged that America's public school system is broken. "It's obvious the system's broken," he said. "Let's admit it's broken. Let's admit it's dysfunctional. Let's do something dramatically different, and let's do it now. Let's fix the thing." Why are America's public schools failing? Why, after more than a quarter century of perpetual reform, has the nation been unable to bring real change to public education? Well, a complete answer, of course, would be very complicated. But at the heart of it lies the power of the teachers' unions, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, and their state and local affiliates. Now, I don't say this out of some sort of anti-union ideology. I say it as an objective description of reality, backed by an enormous amount of data. Union power has created insurmountable problems for effective schools. Why has this happened? Partly it's because the teachers' unions are by far the most powerful groups in American education. More than that, they're special interest groups, which means that they use their power to promote the special interests, the job interests of their members. They're just not in the business of representing the interests of children, and no one should expect them to do that. The purpose of a union is to represent the job interests of its members, and these interests are simply not the same as the interests of children. So how then do they pursue these job interests? Well, they do it in two ways. The first is through collective bargaining, which takes place in local school districts. Through collective bargaining, the unions are able to win countless restrictive work rules.
Why would a teacher choose to join or not join a teachers' union? There are pros and cons both ways. Here's a list of the pros. There are many valid reasons that you should consider in joining a union. These can include: teachers' unions can provide legal protection and advice. In today's lawsuit-happy society, this protection alone can be worth becoming a member. Teachers' unions provide support, guidance, and advice. Most teacher unions have a helpline that its members can call to seek counsel in a variety of areas. Teachers' unions allow you a voice in hot educational trends, debates, and topics that you feel strongly about. Joining a teachers' union gives power to the bargaining position of the union for contract and labor negotiations. Teachers' unions provide several discount program opportunities, including life insurance benefits, credit card opportunities, mortgage assistance, and so forth. They often offer terrific professional development opportunities for their members. Here are some of the cons. You don't agree with union politics. As mentioned before, the NEA is typically a Democratic association, while the AFT is typically a Republican association. Sometimes individuals do not agree with those political stances or a particular stance a union takes on an issue that often does not have anything to do with education. Teachers who have political views contrary to the positions taken by unions may not want to support the union. Union fees are expensive. Most teachers are already cash-strapped, particularly first-year teachers. Every little bit can help, so many teachers feel like the value of joining a union and its benefits are not worth the monetary cost. You simply believe you don't need it. Some teachers believe that they do not need the services provided by the teachers' union and that there are enough benefits to warrant holding membership. This page has to do with bargaining topics and the bargaining environment. The table on the left is a listing of some of the items that the unions and the schools put on the table as they negotiate. For example, wages. Wages are obviously very important, but only 40 of the 50 states allow that to be on the docket. Insurance or fringe benefits. 29 states allow that. Pension retirement benefits, 15 states, and so far and so on down the table. You can see that as you get down near the bottom, there's only 14, like dismissal. Only 14 states allow that to be in the discussion as they bargain. Contrary to what you might think, teachers' unions have been restrained in many states to the topics upon which they can bargain. The next page shows how the number of allowed topics vary by state. Here's a map that shows what states allow how many items from the prior list on the bargaining table. For example, Indiana, where I live, allows 4. But look at the differences. Ohio, 14, Texas, 0, Arizona, 0, Nevada, 12, California, 10, and the whole southeastern band, Texas all the way up to, I guess it's South Carolina, 0. So there are many legislative impacts here, much legislative influence to try to limit the power of unions. Miscellaneous comments about teachers' unions. They make it nearly impossible to dismiss teachers. Not everyone agrees that teacher unions are the solution. In fact, in the age of serious education reform discussions, many believe they are the primary problem instead. In a report on Fox News, John Slossel states that unions may be good for teachers, but they are bad for students. He refers to an ex-police detective in New Jersey, Jim Smith, who is now making a living investigating bad teachers and working through the union-led process of firing them. He describes the process he went through to get rid of a teacher who allegedly hit a student. It took me 4 years, $283,000, which includes $127,000 in legal fees, plus the cost to have a substitute fill in and so forth while he's sitting at home eating popcorn, Smith told Fox News. Unions fight against charter schools. Meanwhile, the parents of nearly 10 million school children across America have opted out of the traditional public school system in favor of private schools, charter schools, or homeschooling. The fact is, after decades of monopoly control of public schools, teachers' unions and their enabling bureaucracies are facing an existential crisis. As kids leave the system, so does the money, along with union dues. Today, charter schools enroll more than 30% of the kids in 14 cities in America and more than 10% in more than 160 districts. The same holds true for parents nationwide. A 2015 poll of 1,000 public school parents conducted by the Educational Post found that 65% agree that public charter schools offer parents in low-income communities options for quality schools that would otherwise be inaccessible to them. They fight against change. The Houston School Board kicked the Teach for America group out of their city on the grounds that it undermines union power. New online learning technologies face growing resistance. Effort to end the Lake Wobegon effect in teachers' assessment, where 9 out of 10 instructors are certified as excellent, even in miserable districts, have been collapsed by foot-dragging and personal attacks that wore out leaders of the effort, such as the Gates Foundation. An expansion of Pennsylvania's popular and oversubscribed program that offers needy children scholarships usable in private and religious schools was recently vetoed by the governor amid pressure from teachers' unions. More resistance to change. But a powerful educational establishment is now pulling political levers to slow the pace of change, and school improvement is at a stalemate. Will the future belong to reformers or defenders of the public school status quo? For decades, unions have blocked needed reforms and helped keep the beleaguered public school system frozen in place, to the detriment of American children. Hopefully the union's decline will have them rethinking their faulty objectives. Teachers' unions actively support left-wing causes. The other way the teachers' union is unique among public sector unions is their hyper-partisanship. Despite and often in defiance of their membership, nearly all unions are left-wing partisan organizations. Nearly all of them support left-wing causes and Democratic political candidates. But the teachers do so with a zeal that dwarfs their counterparts, says Larry Sand, a former Los Angeles school district teacher and prolific observer of teacher union antics. He spent years documenting their left-wing agenda.
The Los Angeles Unified School District moving to begin the school year this fall with online learning, but the powerful LA Teachers Union publishing a lengthy list of demands for reopening schools, many seemingly unrelated to COVID-19, like defunding the police and banning charter schools. So is the union playing politics with a pandemic? Let's ask the Heritage Foundation's Center for Education Policy Director, Lindsay Burke. Lindsay, thanks for being here today. I'm trying as a former educator to figure out what these demands have to do with ensuring child safety during a pandemic. Am I missing something?
No, you're not, Jedediah. This is clearly not about children's education. This is just another example of the unions putting politics ahead of what is in the best interest of children. They are using this moment right now to try to fulfill a liberal wish list. And are using this question of school reopening as a bargaining chip during the pandemic. And so it's really clear this is not about the health and safety in the school reopening question. This is about advancing a radical agenda that includes everything from eliminating charter schools and raising taxes to Medicare for all and defunding the police. We should not be defunding the police. If anything, we should be defunding the teachers' unions to provide some real accountability to families.
The unions do not support merit-based pay programs. Lesson 19 deals with the Maryland move to world class. Though very expensive, this proposal is spot on to what we need to do in this country. It boosts teacher salaries, improves management and organizational structure, educates the poor, and sets standards up to the best systems in the world. It is my prediction that the teachers' unions will fight this to stop its adoption if it ever gets that far. It will produce well-managed and highly competent teachers and make unions irrelevant. Here is a video featuring Michelle Reagan, and she talks about resistance to merit pay.
Davis Guggenheim's brilliant film, Waiting for Superman, you offer the teachers union more money for teachers that are excelling, actually substantially more money, and the union rejects it. Why?
That's what I was asking during the movie, if you saw the incredulous look on my face. Are you kidding me? So this was the situation when the movie was being filmed. We had presented a plan to the union where we said we want to give highly effective teachers the opportunity to make basically double the amount of money that they were in the old system, if they are willing to give up, tenure and seniority protections, et cetera. But it's a choice. They don't have to. If teachers want to stay in the old system, they can. But if they want to go into the new system, they give those tenure rights up, but they will make a whole lot more money. Let your teachers choose. And the union said no. And I sort of couldn't believe it. And it's interesting because the guy who was the president of the teachers union at the time now has had he's come to Jesus, and now he's an education reformer. And what he tells me now is he's like, you know why I didn't put that to a vote? Because I didn't want that policy in place. He said, and I was getting all these emails from teachers saying, put it to a vote. We want it. He said, so I knew I was going to lose the vote if I did it, so I just didn't put it up. Eventually, we actually got the contract in place.
This concludes lesson 27. We thank you for your time.